Hi everyone, thanks for joining us today on our whiteboard session. My name is Dr. Jordan Rigby. I am the assessment director at Viewpoint Center. Today I just want to spend a few minutes talking about the adolescent brain and how it is very much a moving target and how this leads to a need for a re-evaluation, sometimes sooner than you might think. First thing we need to talk about is the adolescent brain. First off, we're only starting to catch up with data and research that says the adolescent brain isn't simply an adult brain with less mileage, but there's actual biological differences in the adolescent brain that result in different behavior in different situations. One of the things I want to talk about is the amygdala and the frontal cortex. So the amygdala is the part of the brain that is the immediate reaction, often an emotional reaction, to certain situations. The frontal cortex is the front part of our brain that has to do with decision making, planning, adaptability, and it really helps us manage ourselves. The amygdala is better developed earlier on than the frontal cortex in adolescence. We know now that the frontal cortex actually doesn't finish developing until well into adulthood. And so what you're left with is an adolescent that is more likely to engage in risky behavior, more likely to miss or misread social cues, more likely to get into fights, to get into accidents. They're less likely to make quick changes to their behavior. They're less likely to think before they act. And so what we're left with is an adult intellectual capability but without an adult impulse control. This is a problem. This is a problem because sometimes that coordination between one's social and intellectual environment is tough to manage with one's emotional and behavioral environment. And so what we're left with is a target that's often moving, tough to nail down, hard to get a sense of where they're at based on their current circumstances. One of the reasons it is hard to understand is the idea of plasticity. So this is the sense that our brains have the capability to adapt, change, respond to our environment. And the adolescent brain is especially capable of this. And one of the things we know is that mental abilities, such as intellectual functioning, are not set in stone. They have a tendency over time to either stay the same, or we've found that some adolescents progress quicker or show a slower growth based on their own unique kind of maturation, but also based on their environment and their response to things. And so what we know is the adolescent brain is full of opportunity and vulnerability. And what I mean by that is the brain is set up to learn quicker, harder, and faster, but that is the negative side effect of that is they're also set up to have problems quicker, harder, and faster. And so it makes sense that about 70% of mental illnesses begin in adolescence and early adulthood because it's during this time of plasticity. And so what we're left with is a need for evaluation if there's problems, but then also a need for a re-evaluation in a couple of situations. But first I want to talk about the benefits of that re-evaluation. So one is after an evaluation, you're recommended, if needed, to be involved in treatment, in intervention, and we can get a better sense of our response to that treatment. But one of the biggest benefits of a re-evaluation is with maturity comes clarity. As adolescents develop, as they get older, we are able to do finer, more kind of detail-oriented assessments. We're able to look at things a little bit closer and a little bit more in a little bit more detail. And so when do you do a reevaluation. Kind of the standard is every 2 to 4 years. You want to get a sense of that response to treatment, or you want to get a sense or updated information related to functioning, because we know there is a sense of plasticity in adolescence development. Sometimes you also want to do a reevaluation prior to times of significant transition. This evaluation might look a little bit different than a full evaluation, but maybe more like a checkup kind of thing. What I want to spend a little bit more time on is when there's a significant change in functioning. So when adolescents demonstrate a difference or a change in their social, emotional, behavioral functioning. And another thing I want to point out is this is not the same old thing. So we're not doing the same evaluation, but we're searching and we're getting data that will expand and add depth to previous evaluations or gather updated information, because those treatment plans will often change based on current functioning. Sometimes people think, well, there's no need for a reevaluation because it's only been a year. With changes in functioning, we often want to get that updated information to help guide more accurate treatment planning. So if you have, thank you for coming. If you have any questions, concerns about anything I talked about today, feel free to contact me or Viewpoint Center in general. We'd be happy to answer any additional questions.